What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in for another Indy Investor Pod. I got some experts with me today talking about the different neighborhoods. What we're basically going to do is we're going to have a series of breaking down just Indy neighborhoods, Indy areas, Indy streets, just kind of talking a little bit of everything. So kind of what we're doing today, we're going to talk about the central part of Indiana or Indianapolis, just right here inside the loop. So kind of all around the downtown. Like I said, this is going to be a series of basically about 6 different episodes. I'm breaking down some different areas. So we're going to do the central, we're going to do the east, the west, the north, the south, and then outside the loop. Today we're going to be focusing on the central. So thanks for tuning in. Like I said, I got some experts with me today. I got Steve Lehman, I got Dave Short, and Sterling Davis here to talk about these Indy neighborhoods with me. And with that, let's get on with the show. All right. Thanks a lot for tuning in to another Indy Investor Pod. I'm excited to talk with these, I call them experts, because these are guys that I've always reached out to and like, hey, what do you think about this area? Or should we buy here? Or man, I don't think I can sell this. Can you help me out? Those kind of things. So I really respect these guys that are on here with me today. I'm really excited just to kind of talk with them about these neighborhoods. And I know when Brett and I started this pod, basically that's what people wanted to know. They wanted to say, hey, can you guys do a deep dive in different areas, different neighborhoods and stuff like that? So this is kind of that first part of what we're going to do with this 6-part episode of kind of digging into these neighborhoods and things. So I have Steve Lehman with me. I have Dave Short. I have Sterling Davis. So I'm excited to kind of just throw it over to you guys and we'll talk about this stuff. But first of all, I'd love you guys just kind of introduce yourself, tell us who you are and kind of what you do, maybe a little bit about your business as well, and kind of maybe how much experience you have and some of what you've been doing within Indy investing and stuff like that. So Steve, if you don't mind, let's start with you, man.
Yeah, I'm Steve Lehman. I'm affiliated with FS Houses and Ashland, Ryan and Mullen. I've been doing this for about 15 years, work in the Indianapolis area since 2010. Came out of Chicago, been researching Indianapolis since 08. We do everything from flips to wholesaling to, buy and holds, had my own buy and hold inventory for a while, sold in 2017. Been helping other companies, wholesalers, build their businesses, things like that, working behind the scenes for a lot of different wholesalers and just other companies with different stuff like that. So that's kind of me in a little.
Awesome, man. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate that. And Dave, how about yourself, man?
Dave Short. I'm mostly a flipper. I do some note creations for some. That's my form of buy and hold. And we flip between 30, 35 houses a year in the Indianapolis area and been doing that for probably the last 10 years.
Awesome. And Sterling Davis?
Yeah. So I'm Sterling Davis. I'm with the Thosty Property Management. We're a local property manager here in Indianapolis. We manage over 500 rentals here, as well as I'm the vice president of CIREAS, which is Central Indiana Real Estate Investor Association. We're just always looking to enhance the quality of our community.
Awesome. Like I said, thanks a lot for joining me, guys. And kind of what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of dig into some of the neighborhoods that are located around basically downtown Indianapolis. So we're going to kind of look at today just some neighborhoods all the way up from like kind of 38th Street, like where Crown Hill kind of ends, that north part, all the way down to kind of like Fountain Square, Base Hendricks, the bottom parts of those, and then over from the river on the west side, over to kind of section it off like where, St. Clair Place, Twin Air, kind of over to that on the east side. So we're going to kind of focus on everything inside of those parameters and just kind of have an open conversation, kind of what we see from them, what we think about them, some positives, some negatives, and those types of things. So kind of starting off, let's just kind of start from this kind of, I guess we'll just start from the downtown, like specifically. So around, around the circle in the downtown area, is it possible for investors to actually invest in some of these areas, like the Chatham Arch and, right around that downtown area? Is that possible for some of these investors that we're kind of dealing with on an everyday basis?
No, go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say, I think investors can do it, but they're going to be, in my mind, more passive investors. We've looked at some, fourplexes, sixplexes, didn't necessarily make sense money-wise, but all of these units sold to like professionals, doctors. Somebody wanted in with low management. They weren't concerned about a 5 or 6% cap. They were looking at bricks and sticks, what I call tire kicker properties, which is what Chatham Arch and Fletcher Place and those kind of neighborhoods are. They're pretty hard for us to get into, but there's somebody that will buy those because of where they're located.
So Steve, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I agree with Dave on that. We just one of the agents at FS Houses just picked up a property over in Fletcher Place. So it there are opportunities out there. They're just not as plentiful as other areas, and your numbers are much more tighter when you get into those type of areas.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. You know, I mean, when you start looking on the rental side and trying to make that into a positive cash flow, it's kind of hard too, right? So I think that's where I had a house that I was selling on St. Clair College and Mass, like at that peak behind the fireplace. And, you know, I knew I was either going to sell it to a couple people. I knew I was going to sell it to an end user. That was definitely somebody. Or I was going to sell it to a developer that was going to level the house and just build something that didn't really care about the numbers. But also, around the time, this is, you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, also knew that it was a growing Airbnb and short-term rental market. But that was kind of those options. But for the Airbnb and rental market, it's still, you know, a $300,000 house was still challenging if you work the numbers. You know, you're not going to make that 9 to 10,000 off of it. It would probably still be closer to the, you know, 5,000 to 6,000 a month, which is kind of risky.
Yeah, I know from the wholesaling aspect of it, of just like anytime I pick up anything down there, I can't look at just like my usual investor that I'm going to, my usual buyers list. It's a lot of the professionals, the LLCs, and everything I'm reaching out to in those typical areas and stuff like that. And you know, like you guys said, just your numbers typically need to be a little tighter, and you got to make sure that you're kind of not making sure you're staying kind of within your wheelhouse. I would say with that stuff too, making sure you are doing what you need to do and things. So what about some of these? I know we can go ahead and talk about them now because these are like the big areas that everybody knows about. I think what basically a lot of people, like when they start investing in Indianapolis, is where they want to be. This is what they've heard about. This is the reason they're in you know, investing in Indy. But you know, we look at like the Fountain Square and Base Hendricks. Those are the two areas that everybody hears about, everybody talks about. And Steve, I'll kind of go to you since your company is FS, you know, starting in Fountain Square and stuff like that. So what do you? I know it's been a crazy transformation. Even I've been in Indy for 6 years now, and like what I've seen Fountain Square turn into is kind of crazy. Is like just within those 6 years and stuff like that. So let's just kind of talk about that kind of that transformation of what maybe you saw from it, like starting off, you know, even 3 years ago to where it is now and what investors can expect from down there.
Well, when I was introduced to Fountain Square, you know, I was told how bad Fountain Square used to be and how dangerous it used to be and how you wouldn't even walk around the streets. You know, you wouldn't, 7 o'clock at night, you wouldn't be caught dead down here, apparently. Now it has changed dramatically. You had the artists come in. They definitely changed things up. If it wasn't for them, I don't think Fountain Square would probably be where it's at today. And I believe that, you know, we were buying houses down here for $10,000, $15,000, you know, turning around and selling them for 30, 40. And it just kind of took off from there. And then some builders came in. They started doing some new mods, I like to call them personally. I don't care for them, but they sell. And they started driving up the prices, and then businesses started coming into Fountain Square. I look at Fountain Square now as a great place to live. You know, you got wonderful people that live here. But as far as investor purposes, I think the boat sailed. There's not, you know, a whole lot there's still houses out here. Don't get me wrong. But your profit margins are much, much smaller. You know, they're not nearly what they once were. You got properties that are going for $100,000 now that should be going for like 30. You know, they're just not in the best shape. But that's what the market calls for. You know, Fountain Square is definitely a great place to live, like I said. But on an overall aspect, I think that for investor purposes, it's definitely kind of, you know, you can find a deal, but it's tough to come by.
Yeah. Sterling, what do you think about some of those areas maybe around like Fountain Square, like the Twin Air and the Barrington, Base Hendricks, even over in the Concord and stuff like that? What do you see from like the rental market in those areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's funny. I'm working alongside Sterling White right now to redo the neighborhood map and upgrade it from what he did 2 years ago, and just seeing like the change of even what he perceived these areas were to what we perceive these areas were, right? Like, you know what I mean? And, you know, these, you know, B class areas. And I agree with Steve, like, you know, on the management side, it's about that cash flow. So you got mostly owner occupied people. You're going to be able to have more single family homes, more stable, which causes the rents to rise. These ranges are so dramatic. You anywhere from $900 to upwards of 1,000. So it does make for its challenges. I think, if we start looking at that Fountain Square, I always talk about the corridors of Indianapolis. When you start looking at, how 65 is going across there, and how to get to downtown, is how the city has developed these things to intentionally develop these neighborhoods. So with those developments, it's no surprise that Fountain Square is building up. It's no surprise that neighborhoods like Bates Hendricks is secondarily to that, and vice versa. If you go on the other side of Windsor Park, and further out you start getting to like Twin Air, it's hit and miss some areas. So I think very much so when you look at a Fountain Square, I agree with Steve, man. It's really hard to cash flow a property at this point, just because the entry fee is just too high.
What do you guys see? I know, speaking of like a Fountain Square in specific, even kind of sticking with the rental market, I always kind of like tell all people, like, kind of, if you're not familiar with the streets, you're not kind of familiar, we look at the Fountain Square area, kind of, if you're like north of the river, then you can just probably gonna be a pretty good flip opportunity. If you're south of that river right there in Fountain Square, like, just, it's a rental property, and that's kind of what you need to look at. I mean, you can flip there, but it's not going to be like the huge gains you're going to have and stuff like that. I mean, what do you think about kind of just even how Fountain Square is broken down? Or I know, well, and we've seen too from other investors and other wholesalers and stuff like that, where just anything close to Fountain Square is Fountain Square and stuff.
Don't get Steve going. Steve, what do you think about State Street? What about north of State, east of State Street, Steve?
East of State Street? It's not Fountain Square. I hate to disappoint everybody, but the boundary line is State Street, even though everybody loves to call it Fountain Square.
That's Steve and I's both pet peeve.
Yeah.
Somebody sends me something on Lexington that's 2000 east. It is not Fountain Square. I like both those areas still, but I'm targeted. I mean, Bates, you have to be targeted. I'm not a big fan west of East Street. It gets so much better east of East Street, and west of State Street is the parameters for all those areas. So it becomes street by street, and but I think one of the things that I like now about those areas, some of the wholesalers have left. So they quit marketing to those areas. So now I'm seeing the prices actually come down on wholesale properties, where in those areas, I think you're buying a lot, and the cost of reconstruction of these older houses is the same or more than new construction. So if you put that into your parameters, then you can go in those areas. I mean, we like those areas, especially in entry levels, 2 bedroom, 2 bathrooms, or 3 bedroom, 2 bathrooms under 1,200 square feet. Those units in Fountain Square, Bates Hendricks, will sell for big money per square foot, and you can still do really well in that. And some of the little tricks you have to learn in those neighborhoods is, an 1,800 square foot house in Fountain Square, if half the square feet is upstairs, and it's got the no good headspace, complete headspace, that is not real square footage in Fountain Square from a marketing standpoint. So you have to be willing to put, what we call shed dormers on those houses to get full headroom upstairs to make those houses work. And so you just have to be cautious in those neighborhoods. And I would never tell a newbie, first timer going in those neighborhoods that they'll get crushed. They'll just absolutely get crushed.
I think you're absolutely right, Dave. I mean, I think when I look at, we were talking about like south of the river, like Pleasant Run Parkway. I've been owning a house on 1515 Villa for about 7 years. I bought it for $35,000. I put somewhere around $20,000 into it, so I was $55,000 all in. Immediately, I rented for $800. Now that same house, I've paid down the mortgage, and that same house, the rents are on comps show that it should be $1,000, and the ARV is somewhere around 110. Now, I think that's very subjective because, as we know, like some of those streets, and this is one of them, Villa, that I have this house on, is block by block, where Villa hasn't came back yet. Brian and Randy sold one of my clients a house on Asbury.
Asbury.
Yeah, 1530 Asbury, right? Great deal for him because he bought it for 30, put 20 into it. The appraised value came back at like 110 or something. But across the street from Asbury is a $330,000 new build. At the corner of Asbury is a complete remodel. So it's so crazy once you kind of go head south there that you can find some deals. But I think these BRRRR investors have to be very careful because it's still street by street. So the appraisal, you might get bit by the appraisal because they're not seeing the same value that you're seeing.
Yeah, I agree with that. The southern half down there is definitely that there's a lot more deals to be had down there. But yeah, you got to be really careful of where you're buying and the street that you're on. So that I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So let's go a little north of Fountain Square then, kind of in the, I know, if you go across the tracks in the Twin Air, then even up further than that, you have all these little pocket neighborhoods and little kind of smaller neighborhoods and just different little areas and stuff like that too. So you have Willard Park, you have Sinclair Place, you have Woodruff Place. Like, of all those areas in there and stuff like that, what are your guys' kind of just, we kind of just go around the horn of like, man, if you were looking to, with your strategy, so Sterling, you kind of focus on, man, if I'm buying and holding, like, or maybe even trying to BRRRR or anything like that there, where are you kind of looking in some of the smaller areas and some of the smaller neighborhoods right there, man?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think you can see, we have 3 projects going on State Street, that Arsenal Tech-like area of State Street. All of them are anywhere from 3 units to 5 units. And they're great projects, but they're a little higher end projects. You're probably buying it somewhere around the 150 mark. These investors are taking them all the way down to the studs and putting anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 into them in hopes that, the value is going to be upwards of the 300 plus, which it is. Like, I mean, everything about that area of like the Arsenal, I really love because it has the home ownership. It has the older architecture of houses. We just been bit by some permitting issues over there in the.
Don't forget about the prison, Sterling.
Well, Dave, we tried to avoid those because Woodruff Place, you don't see the prison anymore. Like,
is that right?
Yeah, like they just walk past. They have vegetable gardens and no prison. It's kind of crazy that like that prison is sitting there and like it literally is like a play yard. Like I was driving past, it's like, man, that's a kid's playground right there.
It's adult daycare.
Right. That's my area.
Yeah. So Dave, what are you seeing kind of in some of those areas over there? If I'm looking to, maybe a great starter area to kind of look at somebody is like, hey, I want to start flipping a house. I want to get into this. Like, where are you going to drive them to over there, you think?
Well, the St. Clair Place, the Twin Air, some of those things, they're what I call they're entry level flipping areas. The right house, you can go there, is not, as long as you're not trying to reinvent the wheel from a pricing standpoint. I mean, we have an old saying in flipping, and 20 years ago it was everything sells for $59.9. Everything. And so you can go anywhere in Indianapolis and do that. And today I think that flipping area is anything sells for $99.9, no matter where it's at. So if you can go into a Twin Air at $39.9 and put 30 in it, you can have a nice profit. But flippers need to understand that if you're 70 or 75 all in on a house, with few exceptions, you're not going to make 40. If you make 15, you've done a really good job flipping a house. So, St. Clair's the same way. I tend not to be a pioneer. Number one, I like a little better margins on a per house basis and feel a lot safer. I would rather You know, quite honestly, I'd rather put $150,000 in a house and make 20 than necessarily gamble with the 39.9 house, put 30 in it and try to make 15. So I'm willing to double my money because of to make almost the same profit. But, you know, newer flippers, they need to be all in at 70, and it gives them a platform. And if they do that house right, you know, it will sell. We've been very successful at you know, doing some of those lower end flips over the years. And, you know, as I look at today's economy and what's going on, I don't know that we won't look at that again, simply because in tougher times, if somebody's buying a brand new all in really good shape house at 99.9, you know, their payment's only going to be $650 a month, and they're renting a terrible house next door for $850 a month.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's where I see a lot of, I think a lot of people are passing up on some pretty decent deals, you know, just kind of looking for that, thinking they're going to make, you know, that 35 to 50 spread on every single flip they do. And there's some opportunities out there, especially for, you know, people that are just starting off or getting their feet wet, or, you know, want to bang out a couple a year of basically just kind of picking up these, you know, $30,000 to $40,000 houses, putting 30 into it and then selling it for right around what you said. I think
an all in at 70 and sell for 94.9 is a really good flip deal. It's a really good flip deal.
Yeah, and it's a great way to get experience too, is what I always come back to. Like kind of figuring those things out is great. So, Steve, what are you kind of seeing? I know you guys were doing some kind of hitting up that Willard Park area a little bit and stuff. What are you seeing from around there and things right now?
Oh, we always, we go into the neighborhoods before anybody else does, and we do exactly what Dave talks about. You know, we buy them for $20,000, $30,000. We sink 40 into them and maybe 50 into them, and then we offload them for about $100K. We don't mind the little $15,000 profit here and there, or 20,000. We're content with that, and as long as we can move them in a quick manner, we just continue to do them. And in the process, that helps build up that ARV value for other investors, and maybe some newer investors to come in, give them a little bit more confidence because the property, the price point's a little bit further. You know, St. Clair Place is, you got to be careful over there, just for the facts that your 900, 800, 900 block are exceptional area. When you get to the 500 and 600 block, you got to be a little bit more careful. There is no 700 block, amazingly enough. And when you get more towards Michigan, New York, in between there, then you got to be really, really careful where you're getting into there. That's not turning over as quick. Hamilton is, and Jefferson, but the further east you go, it's a little bit trickier. So the closer you get over to a rural and Sherman, and you get over in that area over there, Parker, you know, you're going to start getting yourself into some situations that you may not be able to get from underneath. Another area, Rivoli Park, is, you know, you got to be careful what you're doing over there. You just do. People will sit there and try to sell off properties at $80,000. I'm sorry, that's not accurate. Properties over there at best should be going for 30, 40 to make sure you can make a profit on it. Move yourself up to Brookside. Brookside's a good area. It's a solid little area. You can get up to 250,000 ARV value over there. Is it a good starter area? Yeah, it is. But you got to make sure that what you put into the house is what people want too. So you got that, and then you move across over to Springdale and Windsor Park. You know, those are great flip areas right now. It's a lot of builders have gone in there. You see price points as high as $500,000, $600,000, which shocked me completely. I never would have thought that would have happened over there, but it has. Doesn't mean that's the ARV value over there, but you know, it can happen. And just like Fountain Square, it kind of really took me by surprise when that price point hit at 600,000. I was just like, wow.
Yeah. So let's go to Windsor Park real quick. I mean, because honestly, like 3 years ago, I was able to pick up some houses there for, you know, great prices and sell them, make some good margins as a wholesale and stuff like that. Seems like right now I can't get anything there, just because I think it's just all that like big money, company money, some bigger corporations kind of coming into that area and stuff like that. Is that what you guys are seeing as well?
It's what we're seeing, yeah. We're seeing a lot of that. It's not necessarily the bigger companies, but it's people are willing to pay more. but they're either really tearing these houses down and building brand new ones, or they are just coming in and they're really doing a kind of tearing it down to the bones, to the bare bones, and going that route. So they're doing some nice work over there. They are. The builders are, for sure. So it's definitely created the value. And Windsor Park has got a new I can't think of the top of my head, like a theater going in over there and everything. We met the guy who's doing that. So it's got a lot of potential over there. It's a really up and coming area.
Yeah, that's where my office
Good
is.
family
My
area.
office, yeah, my office is right there in that Circle City Industrial Park. And, you know, it's funny to see the transition when we first started, you know, renting there, and rent was like $300, included Wi-Fi, and, you know, so
Yeah.
now, like in front of our building, like we're literally in front of my door, it's they're tearing them down, like you said, and, you know, people are buying lots for, you know, $100,000 plus. And then just buying these free, you know, fabricated homes. It's kind of the play, seems like right now. Right now, it's just not that much of a buy and hold market, just because of the demand for the end user to buy those properties.
Yeah. So let's I'm going to end up splitting this into 2 episodes, and just so you guys know and stuff like that, because we're kind of focused on, I kind of split up these areas, and we'll see. I kind of figured, we'll probably dive into this a lot. So it happens and things like that. But so we've been talking kind of about that, like the very, like right around the downtown, that area, kind of down into Bates Hendricks, Fountain Square, Twin Air, then up all the way up to like maybe like Windsor Park. So in those areas right there, we can kind of go around the horn here real quick, maybe just kind of one last little tip. If anybody's investing in those areas right there, what's one last little tip that you guys just have for them? Things to be careful of, or things to look out for, or things to go after. Steve, let's start with you, man.
I just use caution on what streets you're buying on. That's my tip. Just be very cautious. Find somebody, if you're especially out of state, find somebody who's local here who knows those areas. So just use caution. Yeah,
I would say on that too, like if the street that you're looking on, if it's not necessarily like that street hasn't turned yet, but the one behind it has, the one in front of it has, look at the trends of which way it's kind of going. So maybe that street hasn't, but is it leaning towards that way? So kind of looking at those things as well.
You look for the momentum. Sure.
Yep. So Dave, how about yourself, man?
You know, I think, and I've seen that a lot actually in the last couple of weeks, doing some consulting with a couple people, is that they rely, you know, too heavily on a comp in those areas that might be 4 blocks away. Well, 4 blocks in Bates Hendricks could be the world, as far as the quality. You know, I see that a lot in Mapleton, the Mapleton area, where there's a lot of older houses, and you see a lot of big comps, and you want to make your house that big comp. And sometimes that's not realistic, especially if you're not seasoned to do that, because you can't put the right amenities at the price point that's in that other house that's sold for big money. So just be cautious on using your comps. I mean, because it's illegal at Bates Hendricks does not mean that it's going to bring the top dollar. We just had one where the client was on Iowa Street. Well, Iowa's a very hit and miss street over there. And it was west of East Street. If you pop that house on the east side of East Street, then it's going to go for the money that he's asking now. But I think he might be $30,000 less than that on the location that he's at.
Yep.
Sterling, how about you, man? One last quick tip.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I think, you know, if I, not to beat a dead horse, if I go a different direction, it's just building out your team, just making sure that you have a good team that really understands, and get referrals from those people before you add them to your team, just because, you know, I've had so many people that came to us and didn't work out just because the person that sold them the house told them that they were going to get $1,400 because they bought the house for $140. And, you know, honestly, the rent analysis show $850, you know, so now I either have to make a decision as a property manager, try to get $1,400 or turn away business. You know, so it's just very important to not get so stuck into these numbers, and, you know, inspect and verify, you know, even if you build out your team.
Awesome. And go ahead and tune into the next episode. This is going to be part 1 of kind of the central area. We'll get into the north of the down.